Turning now to an important story out of Georgia, where a killing was caught on tape. This was 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery. He is now dead, shot by two men while he was jogging in broad daylight on a Sunday afternoon in February. And there's brand new information about this right now because a newly released video shows part of a scuffle and the shooting. Now, as with any story like this, we must note we do not know everything that happened before the moments you're going to see in the video, which is a bit shaky. At first, it's hard to follow, but it also has what many experts say is key evidence. Also, before I show it to you right now, I must warn you, this is graphic and disturbing. That is the new video of this shooting. Arbery's family attorney says the video shows that those two men there were the initiators and aggressors in the shooting, calling it a, quote, lynching. Now, there have been no arrests in this case since this all occurred in February. Two prosecutors recused over conflicts of interest. We've also reached out to the police department for comment on this story. Civil rights leaders pressing for an investigation now, criticizing the police for inaction already in a case that essentially involves armed white assailants killing an unarmed black man in broad daylight. Now, for their part, the men involved in the shooting of Arbery insist that they acted legally. They say they reached their own conclusion that they believed Arbery had committed robberies previously in the area. I also want you to know the first prosecutor to handle this case asserted that those men had available defenses of, quote, citizen's arrest and self-defense in shooting this person. Now, one of those two men, George McMichael, told police that they basically pulled up beside Arbery. The video actually appears to show the truck up ahead. You can see it appears to be waiting while Arbery was jogging towards it. The police report states, quote, the two men started fighting over the shotgun, at which point Travis fired a shot, and then a second later, there was a second shot. I'm reading that to you because that is what the police wrote down. But now that the video is public, I want you to know it shows the first shot fired as this wrestling starts and 3 shots fired overall. Now, as the public scrutiny mounts, a new DA is vowing to bring forward evidence to a grand jury for possible charges stemming from this February shooting. Now, before I bring in our guests, I want you to understand one more thing. As a legal matter, going to a grand jury is not the only way to move forward. As everyone knows from every police drama you've ever seen, the police arrest suspects all the time without waiting to go to a grand jury. In addition, while Georgia has reopened non-essential establishments like restaurants and beauty salons, the courts do remain closed due to the pandemic until at least June. Joining us now on this important story is the attorney for Arbery's family, S. Lee Merritt. Thank you for joining me, sir.
Thank you for having me.
What is important for people to understand based on the available evidence, in your view, about this case?
It's important to understand that for me, the amount of conflict that exists in the people responsible for prosecuting this case. The reason that you have two men who have gone unarrested, uncharged, uninvestigated, really, after murdering a young man is because of the close law enforcement ties of one of the assailants.
Your view is that the police's apparent lack of interest or inaction in what was a shooting in broad daylight, an obvious police matter with 2 identified suspects, is because there is some provable bias in the links between law enforcement, the DA, and these individuals?
Absolutely. It's obvious that if the shoes were on the other foot, and I hate that his father had to say this, but that if Ahmaud and his dad went out and killed a young white jogger that didn't have law enforcement ties, they would be at the very least arrested. The idea that these men still remain at large, that the law enforcement community has said there's no evidence that they committed any crime at all, is really scary for the Black community of South Georgia and across the country.
Stay with me. I want to bring in for this discussion Mark Claxton, who's an expert that we've had on the intersection of these issues. He was an NYPD detective, a law enforcement analyst, and also has worked on these civil rights issues after leaving the force. What do you see on the video, Mr. Claxton?
What I see is, I think what everyone is seeing, and I have to agree with you, it is obscene, it is troubling, it is disturbing. There are many elements that are painful to watch. Viewer discretion is definitely advised for watching that video. But the second part that I understand to be true is that it's painfully and troubling familiar in the sense of the investigation and the prosecution tactics at this point. It is a very familiar pattern that appears to be playing itself out, which gives people a tremendous amount of angst. I have to agree with Attorney Merritt that there is always, because of the incestuous nature of the relationship, there is always a problem when you have police involved or law enforcement related individuals involved in these cases, and then prosecutors trying to oversee them. It is obvious, based on documentation, very limited documentation that's been made public up until this point, that what we are witnessing, what we have witnessed up until this point, is really the beginnings and the basis and the making of a continued cover-up. It would have been quite successful had there not been some full disclosure or some disclosure of this videotape. But it's familiar to those of us who have seen this before. There have been many cases like this before, but this is very disturbing, and the video really, really emphasizes that point.
As you mentioned, we're working off the evidence, and in a case like this, we don't have all of the evidence. There is also, though, partial transcript of the call to 911. Detective Claxton, I want to read this to you because the caller is identified as saying, quote, "He is running down the street." Dispatch says, "That's fine. I'll get police out there. I just need to know what he was doing wrong. Was he just on the premises and not supposed to be?" The caller says he has been caught on camera a bunch at night. It's kind of an ongoing thing. Detective Claxton, how does that call, assuming that it can be validly corroborated as made by one of the individuals involved in the shooting, how does that call get evaluated in your view of whether this was potentially, as they defend, a justified shooting or not?
That call, or at least the transcript for that call, should be included as evidence. It is one piece of evidence. And what you hope to do is to compile all of your pieces of evidence, whether they be forensic evidence, whether it be telephonic evidence, as that call is, et cetera, and you try to recreate what has occurred and put together pieces of the puzzle so you have a fuller picture, and you could make an informed decision about proceeding as far as prosecution is concerned. What's troubling here is that, in spite of the fact that the initial district attorney, Barnhill, had obtained this information, I'm sure the call, obviously the videotape, had conducted interviews, had ultimately decided that he would recuse himself, he still felt compelled before recusing himself to offer a legal opinion on the case itself. And it spoke, the letter speaks in terms of definitives. It is concrete in his mind about the innocence of those individuals in this particular case. And those are the type of things that have people very troubled, very concerned, and smelling something that doesn't smell right here.
Yeah, and finally, to Mr. Merritt, obviously race hangs over all of this. Stacey Abrams and Joe Biden weighing in. Biden, of course, the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party, weighing in on this, what is a local case with national implications, saying quite crisply today that he believes Arbery was, quote, killed in cold blood. And he asked for a swift, full, and transparent investigation into his murder. Your response?
Well, I appreciate Mr. Biden weighing in on this. We're way past Swift in this case, so I have to strongly agree with him. We are way past Swift because this happened February 23rd of 2020. And so we need an arrest today, and that's something that can happen. The Georgia Bureau of Investigations can go out and send out officers. They don't have to wait for the court to open up. The FBI can step in because we believe that there are hate crime implications all over this case, and all those actions can happen right now.
Understood. And it is, as both of you have said, quite disturbing. We mentioned that we contacted the police for comment. We included the defenses as stated in the police report of those individuals. This is definitely a story we will stay on. So Esley Merritt, thanks for your time. And Mark Claxton, as always, thanks for your expertise, sir.
Thank you, Ari.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.